Welcome to the Harvest Trees for Your Own Use session in the Learn About Your Land series. In this session, you will learn how and why to select certain trees to cut for your own use, as well as some safety considerations when working in your own woods. This presentation covers cutting wood for non-monetary purposes. If you are interested in timber harvesting and sales, see the timber sale presentation for information on that topic. Cutting trees from your woods can accomplish both tangible and conceptual goals. It's likely you are interested in this session because you cut firewood. However, in the process of harvesting firewood, you can achieve other goals, such as improving the health of your trees and woods. Before you cut any trees, take some time to think about your property goals and how those tangible needs can be met as well. Each tree in your woods has its own variety of benefits. Which benefits are you most interested in? When foresters mark trees to be cut, they use a system called order of removal to guide decisions. This section will walk you through order of removal so you can use a similar system. But before we jump into that, let's cover some tree growth basics. Trees have 4 requirements for growth and survival: water, food, sunlight, and space. Too much competition for any of these 4 results in slower growth, poor health, or even death. Cutting trees is one way to improve access to these requirements for the remaining trees. Lucky for you, foresters have determined prime spacing needs for trees to accomplish the best growth. These spacing needs are referred to as basal area. Simply put, basal area is the area of land occupied by trees versus empty space. When using the order of removal, you will use basal area and stocking as your target. Before you cut any trees, it's a good idea to mark the trees you want to cut. You can use paint specifically for trees or flagging. Either way, this provides a visual cue of what trees will remain when you are done and how they are spaced. In the order of removal, the first option is to remove high-risk trees. High-risk trees are those that are likely to die in the next 3 to 7 years. Mark any of those trees, then check the stocking level. If you have achieved your desired stocking level, you would stop here and cut your trees. If you are still overstocked, you would move on to order removal number 2. One word about wildlife habitat. Dead and dying trees are important for food and cavities. When you are marking high-risk trees, consider leaving 1 to 6 of these trees standing. Once you have marked the high-risk trees, then you focus on your crop trees. Crop trees are actually trees you want to keep that help you accomplish your woodland goals. For example, if you are promoting turkey habitat, your crop trees might be the dominant oaks. Then you would want to mark trees around those dominant oaks that are preventing it from its best growth. Again, repeat the process of checking basal area before cutting or moving to order removal number 3. In number 2, we introduce the idea of dominant trees, those with the top spot in the canopy. It is easy to think that smaller, less dominant trees are just younger trees. However, some of those trees are the same age as the dominant trees, but over time were outcompeted for sun, water, nutrients, and space, and over time have become less developed and weaker. In number 3, we want to remove these trees with lower crown vigor. In this image, these are the trees labeled suppressed and sometimes intermediate. They may have other signs of being unhealthy, such as rough bark and vigorous branching on the lower trunk of the tree. Check basal area, and if needed, move on to number 4. In number 4, we are looking at the form of the tree. For timber purposes, it is best to keep the tall, straight trees for a timber harvest rather than firewood or fence posts. But even if your plans don't include raising high-valued timber, removing the poor-formed trees improves the overall health and genetics of your woods by leaving the better quality trees to produce seeds for the future generations. These photos cover a variety of poor-formed trees that you should consider marking for removal. If you still have not hit your target stocking level, you will next mark trees that don't contribute to your goals for your woods. If, for example, you like to collect sap for syrup, you would not mark maples for cutting. And if you want cover for birds in the winter, you would not mark evergreen trees. Other trees aren't as important then and could be cut. One word of caution here: your woods are more resilient in the face of insects or disease if you maintain diversity. Leaving only 1 or 2 species of trees could put them at risk in the future. There is one final step if your wood still hasn't reached ideal stocking, and that is to favor the spacing needs for trees. In this step, you would pick your best trees and remove trees on 3 of the 4 sides of that best tree. Looking at the crown of the tree in this picture, you can see the space that was opened that this tree will grow into. Many people start to cut trees by walking into their woods and cutting trees that are spaced too closely. Remember that space is last in the order of removal. The other considerations that come first improve the health and quality of your woods, so start at the top before thinking about space. Another mistake is to look for something wrong with a tree and then cut it. However, Some defects don't affect the health or quality of the tree and should be left in favor of the high-risk trees, releasing crop trees, and cutting those low-vigor trees. The last common mistake is treating a tree as an individual rather than a part of the woods as a whole. Evaluate all trees based on the surrounding trees. Before you move from marking trees to cutting trees, let's cover some important safety precautions. Chainsaws are powerful tools designed to cut through trees and can easily injure you if not used properly and with the right safety gear. There are some simple things you can do to make sure your timber harvesting and processing is conducted in a safe and efficient manner. These include utilizing the right safety gear, properly maintaining your saw, and following proper felling and processing techniques. We will cover each of these in the next slides. Tens of thousands of people get injured using a chainsaw every year, and only a small percentage of these are professional loggers. Most of these injuries could have been prevented if chainsaw operators used the right safety equipment every time they operate a chainsaw. Injuries to the legs and hands are the most common, so wearing chainsaw chaps and gloves and holding the saw with both hands when operating it are critical to reducing these kinds of injuries. A good helmet will protect you from falling limbs and kickback, which can happen to even the most experienced chainsaw operators. Finally, make sure that all of your clothing is tucked in so that none can get caught by the rotating chain. A well-maintained chainsaw will make your work more efficient by requiring less energy from you. The saw will do all the hard work. If your chain is throwing dust instead of chips, and you have to put pressure on the saw to get it to cut, then it is time to sharpen it. However, you should never let it get to that point. Sharpening the chain every time you refuel is a good way to ensure it stays sharp. If you are having problems keeping your chain sharp, then it is probably time to take it to a shop that sharpens chains. The air filter should be cleaned about once a month or weekly when you are using the saw heavily. Before you get started working with your saw, always make sure that your chain brake is working properly and that your throttle trigger interlock is also working properly. Finally, always keep an eye on the tension on the chain while you are operating the saw to make sure it doesn't get too loose. It is not uncommon for the tension to lessen during operation. There are a number of different ways to start a chainsaw, but the safest one is to start it from the ground. The additional video will demonstrate that procedure and other things to keep in mind when starting a saw. Now that you are familiar with how and why to choose trees for cutting and how to cut safely, here are some next steps.